Sunday morning. Well, with us today is Melissa DeRosa. Well, and she has a new position. She's opening up a consulting business and is doing communications, executive operations, high-level government affairs, and I'm sure a lot of other things. And I hope WABC correspondent. And Melissa, you're always welcome, and I always enjoy talking to you.
Oh, thanks, John. It's actually not a new firm. I've had the firm for a few years, but I appreciate you highlighting it for anybody out there.
Well, today we're approaching the first 100 days of Mayor Mamdani's term, and you wanted to get some things off your chest.
No, look, I think that Mayor Mamdani ran on a lot of promises, and I think for all of his supporters out there, they're starting to learn the hard way that when the rubber meets the road and campaigning ends and governing begins, it's not so easy. And I think that he promised a lot of people, that things were, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows and free this and free that and free buses and free daycare. And what I find astonishing, really, is the way that the press corps in New York has really, sort of blocked and tackled for him. And he goes out and says things like, we got free childcare, and his comms people tweet things like, he got free childcare in the first 10 days. There's no free childcare. There's nothing resembling it. There's nothing that comes close to it. There's no plan for it. The state funding that was promised in the budget, really just backfill some of the 3K promises that were made previously under other administrations, and begins what is essentially a pilot program, 2,000 slots for 2-year-olds in a state with, over 220,000 2-year-olds. So I think, and the buses are not going to happen, and we'll see what happens up in Albany. But all he has done is spend a lot of time talking about the need to tax people while playing extreme budget games, which has led to a downgrade warning from S&P and Moody's, which is terrible for New Yorkers. And I don't think it's been broadly enough broadcast that the real ramifications of what that could mean. And so I think that, in the first 100 days, people are starting to realize that with this guy, he talks a lot about the Middle East and a lot about the Middle East conflict, and everyone is clear where he stands on that in terms of not supporting Israel and being very anti-Israel. But in terms of governing, I don't think any of the things that would actually impact real New Yorkers that he promised on the campaign trail are going to become a reality. And so that's sort of where I see this first 100 days.
Melissa, I've sort of taken a position. Let me go the first 100 days, and let's see, and hope and pray that he's a smart guy. He's only 34 years old, but he's a smart guy. He went to Bronx Science, which is a great school, and hope that he does the right things. I mean, today I understand on Friday he's doing a program. Of community safety instead of using the police on that, and I'm worried about that because somebody's going to get hurt.
Well, look, the good news is it's just a fig leaf. I mean, what he announced pales in comparison to what he promised all of his supporters and the DSA, and a real betrayal of them, frankly, on the campaign trail. It's good news for us because it's not really real. Like so much of the other things that Mamdani spews, it really is smoke and mirrors.
Well, the headline is Mamdani's safety plan shrinks to 2 staffers, $260 million. Originally, it was supposed to be $1 billion.
And also the fact that it's only 2 staff people. What can you do with 2 staff people? I mean, you run many businesses, John. Like, if you're running some community, this is just a fig leaf to be able to say to his people, see, I did something, and it's really going to do nothing. And it comes at the expense to the taxpayers at a time when he's talking about raising a whole host of taxes, John, not just the millionaire's tax, not just the corporate tax, but eliminating and downgrading the estate tax from its current status to people who, have $750,000 when they die and getting taxed at a rate of 50%, which is pure insanity, in addition to a whole host of other taxes. So at a time when he's talking about this budget gap that he needs to fill, he's wasting money. He's wasting taxpayer resources, and he's continuing to grow a budget, which, in the last year of the Bloomberg administration was $70 billion. And today they want a $128 billion budget. So essentially doubled. It's bigger. His budget proposal is larger than the entire state of Florida. So when we talk
for
about
8.5
things
million
like,
people compared to 24 million people in Florida.
Exactly. It's like there is no discussion ever. When you talk about budget gaps, when Andrew Cuomo first became governor in 2011, he inherited a $10 billion budget deficit, and he turned it into a surplus. And he did that by holding the spending at the agencies, by holding growth year over year to 2% under inflation, capping property taxes, lowering tax, like all of these different things. You have to make tough choices. But it's not even discussed, John. It's like instead we're going to talk about hundreds of millions of dollar programs which are essentially fig leaves and won't actually do anything meaningful in people's lives, so he can say he did it to his campaign supporters, while at the same time saying they're going to continue to raise a whole host of taxes, from property taxes, state tax, corporate taxes, that will ultimately make New York less affordable and continue to shrink our tax base.
Well, I took the position originally that let me give him a chance. Let me see what he does. But I'm concerned. I was on Fox News the other day, and I said that if he reduces, I'm getting older, Melissa, and if he reduces the inheritance tax and he wants to tax everybody 50%, my kids will hate me if I don't move to Florida.
Well, and the other thing is, there are people like you, John, who obviously have a certain amount of wealth, but what he's talking about, even lowering it to a $750,000
that's the price of almost every condo in New York.
And you're talking about people who are minority communities, people who were middle class that have worked really hard to save and save and save so they can pass it down, a little something down to their family, their children. You would wipe that out. And so, again, that's something, and when he talks about the property tax increase in such a flippant way, that would target the middle class, that would target minority neighborhoods, that would target Staten Island disproportionately, all these things. And so, you get, what did Ed Koch say? He said, the people have spoken and now they must be punished. And that's sort of what it feels like right now. You have a government that's not being particularly run well. You have a mayor who is obsessively talking about only two things: raising every tax he can identify, and Israel and Palestine, and that's it. And so right now, I think he's still on a sugar high. He does have an added benefit of a press corps that does not hold him accountable or take him to task for anything. And in fact, the New York Times does a lot of heavy lifting for him. You saw 2 weeks ago, there was one story and how the New York Times went after Dan Goldman's wife for her prior social media posts. And then when it came out that Zoran's wife had much worse things that are living on social media, they basically gave her a pass because he said she's not a private person, even though she received tickets to sit in the front row at Fashion Week as the First Lady, and she's posing for photo ops with New York Magazine and giving exclusive interviews. She's not a private person. So people, I don't think that it has bubbled up enough yet. But ultimately, government, especially city government, exists in our daily lives, and you feel it when it's working and you feel it when it's not. And this government is not being run well, and we're going to see soon what happens on the tax front and what happens, and people are going to realize none of the promises he's made have come to fruition. And when that happens, you're going to start to see his popularity sink, and you're going to start to see a lot of very unhappy people pack their bags and leave, whether it's for Florida, New Jersey, Long Island, but they're not going to stay around for this.
Well, I can't afford to pay 20% for the federal government and 50% for the state and city, 70% inheritance tax. I mean, that's doesn't. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me on, John. I just want to make one more point, which is,
tell me.
New York City already has the combined city, state, and federal taxes. You are the highest taxed locality or entity in the country. And so when we talk about doing these things, like, it's so flip. At a point post-COVID, when you still have the ability to do remote work, when you have the ability to Zoom, when you have the introduction of things like AI that are going to massively disrupt how businesses are run and the amount of people you're going to employ, doing anything right now that only motivates people to relocate tax shelters around the country, tax havens around the country, is not a good thing. And the idea that people don't get that and that he doesn't get that, it's not the campaign trail anymore, it's governing. You have to care about businesses leaving, and you have to care about high-income earners leaving, and also having the trickle-down effect of a shrunk tax base, which will mean it'll be more expensive for everybody else, the middle class, et cetera. And so these are the things that people should be talking about in a very sober way, because the consequences of them could be dire.
Melissa DeRosa, thank you so much for coming on, and we're going to talk to you much more often because we need your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, John.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I
Filed my return.
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though. I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.